everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Higher Ed Matters, MediaCross's podcast, where we discuss all things higher education, marketing, etc. And Austin, we met within the last year or so,
Yep.
and we have talked about how the higher education industry can sometimes kind of have this negative spin in the media, or sometimes we're even a little bit down on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
As an industry,
Yeah.
we've been through so much. Education in general, not just higher ed,
Yep.
definitely took a bit of a hit, in the pandemic, like
Yep.
many industries, but I still feel like we're kind of gearing back up to pre-pandemic times in terms of higher education and how everything works and recruitment. And it's really just been an interesting time for you, having been, you're a young professional,
Yeah.
graduated within the last few years, and chose to work in higher ed. And you're still with us.
Still pushing.
You're still,
Absolutely.
you've gone through lots of different kind of trials and learning experiences. And I wanted to talk to you about those things, because I think that higher education, it's obviously my career path and my passion. Wanted to talk to you as a young professional, new to the field. And, maybe you have some great advice for either people that are graduating or just kind of feeling that, in that first few years of their profession, and because of sometimes outward negativity, wondering if this is a really great place to be, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One, I'm just super glad to be here on your platform and you bringing me here. So,
of course.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk all things higher ed and my
Awesome.
experience and things like that. So glad that we were able to connect and
Absolutely.
that I'm here today. So
yes, thank you. So you graduated within the last few years. Your first professional foray has been for a college marketing, like a college marketing / admissions role. Tell me how you found it.
So this is around my second semester of undergraduate, like my graduating year.
Yeah.
And I definitely came across this role. It was communications coordinator for UMSL. I've heard about UMSL before.
Right.
And I thought like, this would be like a pretty decent opportunity here. It kind of had all the criteria I was looking for. Just pretty much anything marketing. It also kind of featured that I would like be able to connect with other departments.
Right.
Possibly do social media. And so it was something I was really interested in, and I definitely took a liking to it. So I was just applying on this random night in my dorm room. And, July after graduation, I got a call back. Right? Like, I wasn't stressing at all or anything. And I got a random call. And they were just like, hey, like, we seen you apply for this job.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I did. I think I did.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, like, we're calling for an interview. And from there, that was kind of it. So
awesome.
I did a phone interview and an in-person interview, did a presentation.
Yeah.
And I closed it. So.
Awesome. And for our friends that are not St. Louisans like we are, UMSL is University of Missouri St. Louis.
University of Missouri St. Louis. Sorry for everyone outside of St. Louis.
we that's the only word we know when we talk about UMSL, right? So I think that you had told me before, like you were looking at agencies and maybe social media. How has these first couple years in higher education, has it changed your kind of career trajectory or goals, or like your path that you're looking to do like in the next 5 years?
Yep. Good call. Yeah. So when I knew something about me kind of early on, so I definitely knew I wanted to do social media. I thought that was like something I was really going to go for. And I think as I'm start to be more realistic, as definitely when I'm taking upon this higher ed role, the cultures are completely different,
right?
Like completely different. And I think I fit more in a higher education culture. I understand that there are certain times of the year, like now, first day of classes or the entire summer leading up to the first day of class. Like those are pretty much like the rush times. But eventually, it kind of smooths out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that culture is the same way in agency world, right? Like there's always different projects to work on. There's always different clients that need different things. I can vouch for that. So like there's a lot of different aspects that go into the agency world, and it's just completely different from higher education. So I thought at the time it was something that I wanted. And I think as I'm more in the higher education culture, I can kind of see that. I think this fits me a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm a super lax guy. I don't like dressing up. that could probably fit me in agency world, maybe.
Right.
But just some of those aspects,
Yeah.
it has that balance of I still have to show up and be professional,
Oh, sure.
and be presentable, and making sure that I'm on my p's and q's, but
Mhm.
also at the same time, like I know later in the winter, like there's going to be a break, right?
Mhm.
And I get
Right.
to benefit from that. So having some of those government kind of like
Yes.
aspects to it really
Sure.
kind of favors it
Mhm.
sometimes. And so yeah, I think it just fits me a little bit better. So
Just a version of what you
right.
kind of imagined,
Yep.
right? But let's talk about the experience that you've gained because I feel like um you specifically and in this role, and I think is sometimes just the case in general in admissions and marketing roles, especially as trends change, needs change,
Hmm.
like the CRM world as a whole, that
Yeah.
that has become something that needs to be staffed up around
Yep.
that wasn't that way maybe
Yep.
5 years ago. Where you've kind of almost had to figure out your role as you go. Talk to me a little bit about how that worked out.
That was really different for me. Really different. So yeah, coming into enroll, where I knew that I kind of had some experience, as far as working with uh, just different companies or different agencies. I kind of had that real
Hmm.
world experience in undergrad.
Right.
But transitioning to higher ed, is literally an entire different culture,
Hmm.
that I was not familiar with at all. I was not familiar with the word CRM,
Right.
database, looking at student records,
Right.
FERPA. I remember I sat into a lot of meetings with our IT team,
Right.
and I mean, I just had no business being there. I had no
Yeah.
reason being in these meetings, and I'm sitting here like, should I know these things? Should I not know these
Right.
things?
It is a
What?
whole world of
It's a whole
acronyms,
world.
right? Like the
I'm
acronyms
like,
are
yeah,
abundant.
like residency. I'm like, what? Like, I mean, like, yeah, like I get it, I don't.
Right.
So it spent a lot of meetings of me just not understanding. But
Mhm.
I think I had to lean into that
Yeah.
because only I could be a sponge in those moments. So
Right.
when I'm starting to hear certain lingo that's being, used, like TRN, that's transfer, got
Right.
it, right? Like, so over time it starts to make sense. And now I'm like definitely using all these lingos and these different terminologies.
Mhm.
That's all higher ed specific, and sometimes I have to kind of remember that too, being in the space. Like,
Right.
oh yeah, I forgot. I can't say that. I have to say transfer, right? So yeah, it was a lot of things that I had to pick up, but
So tell me a little bit about like your like a day in the life. Like what kinds of things are you managing for the admissions office?
yeah. So our drip campaigns is the most
Okay.
important part. So we have a lot of communication flows. Um, all the way from if you're a prospect, in our system,
Mhm.
like a junior of high school, all
Mhm.
the way to now you're confirmed. So glad there to have you here.
Right.
So kind of thing. So it's a far range of audiences that I deal with as far as communication flows,
Mhm.
and so that's something that I'm managing pretty much daily.
Yeah.
Got to make sure that messages are appearing how they supposed to,
Right.
not just on a desktop view, but a mobile view.
Mhm.
Anytime subject lines are maybe running off the screen, I'm like, oh, okay, let's shorten that a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm managing conflows all the time, particularly when it comes to marketing materials. That's
Mhm.
very important to us, and that's working with our marketing and communications.
Mhm.
And so that takes a team effort, and a department effort to be on the same page. Having those conversations, that's all the way, all the time. Like it's
Mhm.
pretty important.
For sure.
Um, Vendors. So anytime we're outsourcing things such
Mhm.
as social media
Sure.
ads, hi MediaCross, um,
Hi.
and pretty much doing all things lead
Yeah.
generation. Those are conversations I'm in on.
Sure.
And it's really evolving, I would say, my role,
Mhm.
particularly because when I started, we were coined the Slate team,
Right.
and under a new kind of leadership now, we're
Yeah.
the enrollment marketing team,
Okay.
that pretty much has kind of we're being able to make our own decisions and call
Mhm.
some of the shots for as far as how do we increase enrollment. So knowing in this role that I'm in now,
Mhm.
it's a lot more freedom, but it's also kind of that respect. I feel like that's there. It's like, all right, like we kind of have the backing of the university and
Mhm.
be able to just make certain decisions on increasing enrollment. So that's really kind of like my role in a
Mhm.
nutshell.
Yeah, so you're kind of like the kind of central point of contact for like really a wide
A
array
wide
of
array, yeah.
of tools
Yep.
basically,
Yep.
that are based in marketing, but for the use of enrollment, it sounds
Absolutely.
like.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like working within Slate? Do you like that system? And for our listeners, right, that we talk a lot with our clients
Mhm.
about CRMs and making the choice, and we're in the middle of going out to an RFP.
Yep.
As somebody that sits in the seat of the person that creates the campaigns on a day-to-day basis, watches them, tests them, all that kind of stuff, how does this component of Slate work for you?
I would say I'm pro Slate.
Okay.
I am using the system. Pretty much seeing where we were when I started and
Mhm.
seeing where we are now. It's just an ongoing work in progress,
Right.
and I think that's probably how a lot of people feel with their CRMs.
Sure.
Like you get a person to come in that's like can specialize in a certain part or certain part of your system.
Mhm.
You might see that part expand a little bit
Right.
more, and so I've just seen it expand just due to, seeing more people on the team.
Mhm.
I know there was a point in time, particularly with with Slate for our school, it wasn't a lot of help on the implementation,
Right.
and I hear that a lot among
Mhm.
just everyone dealing
Yeah.
with the CRM. It's the
Mhm.
implementation part, and so I think that could possibly be an area maybe just for Slate to
Mhm.
possibly maybe should have a little bit more support in. Is
Sure.
particularly that support aspect
Yeah.
because you get a lot of people that are like, all right, I don't really know too much. However, I would love to be able to go to someone or, some system and just say, hey, like, I need help doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But outside of that, I mean, when you have the people to implement everything you need for and really
Mhm.
make it customizable for everyone that's going to be using it, I think you would really see the benefit for it. But that's in all CRMs. I wouldn't necessarily call that Slate specific.
Yeah.
Anytime you can implement a brand new system and everyone can utilize it, or you have the support from IT or tech to really support it in the growth of it, you would just see that your CRM will probably have a little bit better experience on how you use it.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
only comes, some of that comes with time, some of that comes with resources, but across the board, I think you can, whatever CRM you use,
Mhm.
you probably like it and you're a bit biased to it. So
Right. It does take a big team though.
yeah,
Like
it
I
does.
think that that's one of the big learning experiences of the past several years with CRMs being, much more of a necessary tool,
Yep.
not a desired tool, right? Is that there does need to be kind of like a multidisciplinary team that sets everything up and
Yeah.
architects it and runs it, and in order to make it really worth its investment.
It's all just resources and it all takes a certain amount of care and time. You just have to be really intentional about it.
So Austin, you mentioned that a big part of your role is collaborating with your marketing and communications office. What are some of your lessons learned in terms of your role that is kind of sort of straddling, the marketing world and the enrollment world, and how you work with your marketing and communications folks?
Yeah, so that's been a transition, particularly in higher ed, that I did
Mhm.
not foresee, and it's more, I guess you would call it the politics of it.
Mhm.
I mean, not necessarily kind of like, hey, this is us versus them,
Sure.
but certain people have certain you know, criteria that they need to meet by the end of the year, or they have certain deadlines, or they have certain numbers that they need to reflect. So, when it's time to work together, we're both here on the same, on the
Right.
same team trying to both get things done.
Mhm.
And so it just really takes a certain level of patience.
Right.
But you also have to be persistent about it as well.
Mhm.
Just letting it be known about just some of the goals that need, like, hey, I know it's the summertime and fall is coming back up. We kind of need some of these things like
Right.
rolling. So, it really just takes just really being careful about it,
Mhm.
because you don't want to upset anybody that you're working with closely
Right.
with. If you want to get feedback, make sure that it's going to be kind of constructive, that you're
Mhm.
not just going to be like, oh, this is bad. Bye.
That
Like,
is good advice.
no, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you just have to be intentional.
Mhm.
These are relationships that just won't die. It's only going to continue to grow and grow and
Right.
grow. So you just kind of have to nourish it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I've really been noticing is, we're all on the same team. We all have things to do. But there's ways to work together that can be very efficient,
Mhm.
not just for us, but it's for the university.
Right.
And, many times it's for students. So
Mhm.
keeping that in the front of my mind is always important when I'm
Right.
working with different departments because I'm not trying to be so biased towards, all right, well, this is how a mission sees it, or
Right.
this is how, another department can see it. Like we're all trying to see it just on a, hey, we're here to work together. We have to look at this from, all aspects.
Mm-hmm.
No idea is a bad idea. However, it could be a more efficient idea, so
Right.
just kind of having some of those conversations, it just grows over time. And that's something you just have to, um, I don't want to say deal with, but you just kind of have to deal with.
Yeah,
It comes with
yeah.
the
Got to
territory.
work through it a little bit. The colleges and universities that do have those like strong working relationships doesn't mean everybody's best friends all the
True.
time every day, right? But
Absolutely.
strong working relationships between the marketing and admissions offices are the more successful at really pushing out like quality marketing because I often see like the marketing and communications offices as more the university brand,
Yep.
right? Like they're in control of the brand and the brand message, but it's the admissions office that truly understands the specific audience,
Yep.
right? And like
Yep.
how we translate that brand for a high schooler or an adult,
Yep.
or, that you as in the admissions office
Mhm.
are the ones that have the conversations with the students day in and day out. You know exactly where their head is at. And so it's
Absolutely.
kind of combining those two specialties to
Mhm.
make the best work to work together.
Yep.
But you've worked in your career so far through a pandemic, right?
Oof. Yes.
So that was
I made
one.
it.
You made it. We
Yeah.
all made it. We're all here today to talk about it. That's great. But you also, in the midst of the pandemic, and your early parts of your career, you've also had a major leadership change, right?
Yep.
At the University of Missouri, St. Louis. So, how have you kind of weathered that? Because that can also be very much a kind of upending feeling to like to have the top level kind of totally change.
Yeah. Just the entire pandemic was just a very interesting time to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of, particularly in higher education.
Right.
This was the one time where I kind of was thinking, like, man, you know, maybe there's an opportunity here to
Mm-hmm.
kind of go back to the drawing board.
Right.
I think a lot of institutions were just kind of comfortable with doing what they were doing,
Yeah.
even if it was, getting an output or not, but just kind of being comfortable with it overall. And the pandemic really had to make you analyze every single thing.
Right.
Like, is this event that we're doing, is it like worth even just having the people there for, or the
Mm-hmm.
staffing for? Does this event even make sense? Like
Right.
some of these things were just so happen are just happening because we're just used to going with the flow.
Right.
And I think when the pandemic happened, everyone had to take a step back. And even though everything just went virtual,
Right.
oh yeah, we do need it. Let's just make it virtual. Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. Everything was Zoom.
Right.
So, there was just this point in time where everyone was confused, and at least in the higher education space, everyone kind of knew that they were all confused.
Right.
We didn't know what to do. And it was just a very interesting time. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, from and also adding on the leadership
Right.
change.
That all kinda happened at the same time,
It
right? It
was
was kinda
all in the same
overlapping, yeah.
time. Yeah. So yeah, I went completely virtual.
Right.
And I was able to still perform at a
Mhm.
pretty much at a higher level away from the office,
Really?
working from home, just
Okay.
knowing how we needed to implement certain project management.
Mhm.
So going to Teams, this is not an ad Microsoft, but Teams was a very great
Okay.
platform for us,
Nice.
just being able to manage a lot of projects.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really great. And we were going through this time where a lot of events were transforming to virtual.
Mhm.
There was a lot of just high school visits, all just everything just going
Mhm.
virtual. And yeah, like not too far after we're moving everything to virtual, this is kind of when the leadership change is happening.
Right.
And so, I mean, you just kind of had to empathize and go through
Mhm.
it as well. Like
Right.
everyone was in different positions, and it just took a certain level of optimism to kind
Yeah.
of see it through.
Yeah.
I still was trying to be aware of the opportunity that I had being so new in the space.
Yeah. And now that we're, I guess, we're not, I don't know that we're out of the pandemic. We're whatever it is we're doing now,
Yeah,
right?
whatever we're doing,
Whatever this is,
whatever we call it. I
whatever
don't
the
know what we
post
call it,
COVID.
but yeah.
Um, are you required to return to the office, or are you working like a hybrid
So I
schedule?
still have a hybrid
Okay.
schedule. I do.
Yeah.
I love hybrid.
Mhm. I do too.
I
Big
love
fan.
virtual work.
Yeah.
We have to keep it.
Yeah.
I know higher education is a little different.
Yeah.
I understand it's tricky for our industry and our space because students are always first, and we need to
Mhm.
see students, and we want to have those one-on-ones and those face-to-faces.
Right.
But I think as we're kind of seeing too that the generation under us or that's getting ready to go to school, they would prefer to meet you virtually.
Really?
I think they're just kind of used to it.
Yeah.
I think everyone's used to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would much rather kind of just check you out on social media before they even like want to have that face to face.
Right?
So it's just a lot of different channels that students are kind of getting to learn about your school before they
Mm-hmm.
ever have a chance to meet with you or someone from that school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's just more common that you just kind of see it now. So you want to have that option of a student just be like, hey, like I can set up this meeting online and then
Right.
we can discuss when I'm at home or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just think it's just a sign of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. They changed all of their ways of communicating as well, right?
Yep.
And so it does become normal.
Yep.
That's interesting. In terms of the new leadership, and also I think it was, really important during the pandemic to have strong leadership.
Yeah.
Obviously you went through a change which can feel awkward and create some uncertainties, but it seems like the new leadership at University of Missouri St. Louis does have that positive, decisive kind of approach in terms of here's how we're going to take UMSL kind of to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys have had a really good year so far.
Yeah. I mean, kind of have just like a new team.
Mhm.
So some of the leadership positions kind of stayed the same as well. But, particularly, we got Reggie on board.
Mhm.
That kind of really changed a lot for us.
Right.
Um, like you just said, just the leadership. You can't
Mhm.
really replace that in
Mhm.
any capacity. Like once you kind of have someone that's new, that's going to have just objective opinion,
Mhm.
and can look at things and just be like, all right, well, I can see that these are things that's being done well.
Mhm.
These are the things that need to get better at. Just being able to be really logical about
Mhm.
it, and just addressing it head on how to fix it.
Right.
So uh, it kind of was really easy when he got on the team
Mhm.
because everyone was so fresh that it was kind of like,
Sure.
for the people that was there, it was like, all right, we're ready for something new. And the
Yeah.
people that are fresh, it was like, all right, this is the new. So,
Right.
like, so you kind of really didn't have a
Yeah.
chance to know anything
Mhm.
otherwise. And it's just only helped us to get to this point where we are now. So it's been
Nice.
wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's get back, if we can, to drip campaigns
Yep.
and managing, communications. I'm sure that part of your role is to kind of plan out the communication plan and all
Mhm.
of that. The whole mapping
Yep.
and strategy. Is there anything that you found that is like just works really well? Like whether that's subject lines or the way that you're building your campaigns. What kind of advice could you give somebody that's kind of like figuring this out?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different things
Mhm.
that goes into this, but I guess some of the ones that jumps out right away.
Sure.
Segmentation is really
Okay.
important.
Yeah.
I would say that because you don't want to treat your audience as a one size fits all. Segmentation is really important because you
Mhm.
get to tailor your messages to a certain audience at that given time of where they are.
Right.
So I would definitely say segmentation is really, really important.
Mhm.
Timeliness is really important
Mhm.
because in higher education, we have things like FAFSA, right?
Sure.
And that happens at a certain time of the year.
Mhm.
If you have like housing is not available all the time. It
Right.
kind of starts or opens up at a certain time, so where students can
Mhm.
apply for housing. So timely messages is really important because you just want to make sure that you're getting it out um, at a certain time so a student can act on it when
Mhm.
they need to.
Mhm.
If you give it to them when it's out of place,
Right.
it doesn't feel personalized, which personalization is really important as well too.
Sure.
So you want to be able to make sure that when you're giving a student the right message at the right time, that it's going to be based off some of their behavior as well. You
Mhm.
don't tell a student to apply for something that they already applied for.
Right.
That's like a mistake.
Mhm.
So you just want to be able to serve things that's going to be timely, and you're going to segment it based on where that person is,
Mhm.
and you personalize it.
Yeah.
You making sure that it's based off their actions or some of the things that you know about them. Because behavior is really what's driving a lot of these things,
Right.
right? Like once
Yeah.
you take one step to the next, all right, then you can start to do all this stuff now.
Mhm.
So those would be the biggest things that I've learned throughout
Yeah.
the way because it's shown in the numbers.
Yeah.
Like when you have X amount of applications coming in than what you did, last year or something like
Mhm.
that. you're not going to necessarily credit to all of the, my emails are
It was
so
only the
great. It was
emails.
so great, right? But once
Yeah.
you kind of make more of an intentional effort, you
Mhm.
have to give yourself some kind of credit.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
It's all part of the same kind of ecosystem. And
absolutely.
I think those are all great tips. And it definitely seems like something that, the slate system also helps you do, right?
Hmm.
Like having those triggers and the data with which to then trigger new, communications that are relevant.
Hmm.
Because I think that's also one of the um, potential mistakes that are made with email
Yeah.
specifically is that because email is so prevalent and inboxes can get filled so quickly that the information does have to be like timely, relevant,
Yep.
personal, like it's got to hit all those boxes or it's just going to get deleted, right?
Right. And that's way before we even talk about, your email layout or,
Mhm.
subject
Sure.
lines or, even your subtext. That's
Mhm.
something I'm really getting more involved in is like
Mhm.
pre-headers. I'm
Right.
so picky about it. Because those are just one of the things that I
Right.
know when I open emails,
Yeah.
that's something like I
You
love to
notice it. Yeah.
right. Like I want to be able to kind of get like a precursor before I
Mhm.
like actually click on something.
Yeah.
So these are the things that I just try to incorporate from my experience
Mhm.
as, being a person that's probably getting marketed to all the time.
Right.
But also just kind of taking some of those practices that I see, or maybe,
Mhm.
all right, like I see how they got me here,
Right.
so just taking some of those things and
Yeah.
incorporating a higher ed. I mean, email is email, and, you have to, I guess you have to segment it based on kind of like your industry,
Mhm.
but there are certain practices that just transcends industries.
Yeah.
It's just about, is this good or not,
Yeah.
or is this timely? Like that's something that you should always have to consider,
Mhm.
nonprofit or higher education. So
Sure. Yeah, but I also think that, that's also just the wisdom that a newer generation brings into higher ed,
yeah,
right? Because higher
yeah.
education has kind of historically been this kind of, kind of we do it because we've always done it,
I use traditional.
Yeah,
It's very
because it's
traditional.
very it's so cyclical, right? Like it kind of makes you set in your ways, right? Like
Yeah.
so you do need people that are newer, fresher to the industry, that also are doing exactly what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You're paying attention to what are these other brands that are outside, higher education doing to catch my eye? Like
Hmm.
what are their subject lines look
Right.
like? And how do their emails look? Because that's exactly what you're kind of competing for, at least from an attention
And right.
space, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's a part where, like you said, with having just fresh
Hmm.
people, just to be able to kind of get an idea of what the landscape looks like.
So Austin, we talked about that. Yes, you are enjoying being part of the higher education
Yes.
industry in your
Yes.
early career. What would you say if you were talking to a student at UMSL or another college that's about to graduate, looking for marketing? What are kind of the positives of saying like maybe you should look into marketing, at at local colleges, like
Mhm.
marketing jobs in colleges?
Yeah, I think you can see your impact right away.
Mm, yeah.
Um, this was a role that I got a lot of confidence in
Hmm.
because I was able to implement certain systems or certain softwares that wasn't used prior to me getting there,
Yeah.
and that kind of helped with a lot of my email building,
Yeah.
and that transcended across departments as well. So, if that's one of those things where you kind of want to be able to feel like your ideas are heard, or you feel
Hmm.
like you have something fresh and something new to bring to the table,
Right.
higher ed is the space for that
Hmm.
because you learn that a lot of people are trying to get out of their bad processes. Like
Sure.
if
There's a need.
yeah, right. There's a need for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make this more efficient?
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of ways to make things more efficient that even if it's not even directly tied to your role. So if you really want to make an impact, that's something I would definitely say for people that want to get into higher ed. You've got something fresh or something new to bring to the table,
Hmm.
in an environment that we kind of mentioned is can be traditional at
Hmm.
times. There's a lot of room to explore, and I think that's something that a lot of young people kind of want to do. Like they want to
Hmm.
be able to feel like your ideas can be heard, and not
Right.
only that, but it can actually change things. So that's
Yeah.
where some of that gratification comes in, where it's probably not the case in a lot of different industries.
Sure.
And I can even say possibly because of my management,
Hmm.
it's been a bit. maybe it's been helpful for me to be able to kind of have these ideas, or maybe
Yeah,
feel like I have the free reign to do so.
for sure.
But I feel like higher education is in general a space where people always have ideas.
Hmm.
But how can you come up with something that's efficient or change some kind of processes down
Hmm.
that can make you, um, way more valuable, than you can possibly see that in other industries.
Yeah. How do you feel? So, I always think that higher education, at least for me, and the marketing of higher education, um, is special because it is something you can really believe in at the end of the day,
You can.
right? Like, it's not, you know, marketing chips, or I love chips, nothing against chips. Chips is my favorite thing. But,
Yeah.
it is something that feels impactful, like that you are, that, marketing something that betters, like eventually betters society as a
Hmm.
whole and gives people opportunity, is something that you can feel really good about when you go home at
Right.
night, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, like higher education for me, think I'm starting to learn like, I'm really passionate about the access part
Mm-hmm.
of it too.
Yeah.
So, you think about language, it's important that, some of the language that you use, you make sure that everyone
Yeah.
can always find a spot in
Yeah.
your university.
Absolutely.
And so you want to make sure that you're using some of that language,
Mm-hmm.
because people, kind of want to be able to have that certain individualism to your school,
Right.
versus another school. So, just making sure that, um, if whatever kind of your passion is, there's a way for you to directly do that in higher education.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not all the time marketing, or if it's communications, there's an overlap, all the time in
Right.
one way or another.
Right.
I'm not too good to help with orientation setups,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
talk to students and
Uh-huh.
help them navigate to classes or anything like that. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be that aspect that will really help you kind of overall become a better person,
Mm-hmm.
and how to work on teams, how do you communicate, a lot of soft skills, but you can hone in on it and really make it like your life.
Mm-hmm.
So
So, what do you think is the biggest emerging trend in higher ed recruitment and marketing?
yeah, so I see, ambassadors,
Okay.
particularly student ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a real big thing, I would say, moving forward. I think obviously I think people are familiar already with student ambassadors
Sure.
at their university, but we're in the influencer culture.
Yes.
And so, with that being the case, your student ambassadors are no longer like giving campus tours.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually telling, incoming classes like, hey, this is what you can expect if you come to my school.
Right.
And that influencer kind of name, you can leverage that for your students, because
Yeah.
they're actually the ones that are here.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that being really really popular, just along higher ed. But in the digital age,
Yeah.
everyone, they don't have any problem following like their influencer or that person that they like for shoes, or
Right.
colognes, perfumes, whatever.
Yeah.
So just knowing that that's kind of like the um, the new space, influencers is
Yeah.
just only going to continue to be more prevalent, and your ambassadors are going to take on a bigger role.
Yeah.
I also think just video and
Yep.
short form media, I mean, that's absolutely here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a point in time where we kind of knew that videos did really well on Instagram anyway.
Right.
But now videos is just a thing everywhere. You
Yeah.
cannot escape a video.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely get used to seeing just everyone 15-second, 30-second clips of universities.
Yep.
That's definitely going to stay. And I would say the personalization as well
Yeah.
too. I know that there's a lot of different universities that are already maybe tracking
Mm-hmm.
ping data or
Right.
something along the lines of that. However, there's just going to be an increased competition of it, as all these schools are like, hey, like I see that you're interested in this, learn about this.
Mm-hmm.
So probably what you thought was a unique for you, or for your university, you're
Right.
competing with a lot of different universities that are doing the same thing. So
Absolutely.
makes the market more competitive. But that's good because we're all trying to increase enrollment. So,
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I feel like we've had some conversations recently where, colleges are doing that really well, like,
mhm.
using kind of positioning as influencers, and they'll almost like go to a campus event just to meet that influencer, right? Like
Really?
that's the thing they want. They really want to
Uh,
meet that
absolutely.
guy that they follow because it's, whatever, it's quirky content or whatever, he's
He's
popular. And so they're
popular,
like, they
right?
want to go and meet that guy. And it's
Right.
just like, wow, this is a whole new world.
Right. Yeah, it's a whole new world. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, you just wouldn't have thought that,
Hmm.
a person, I mean, but then again, you always kind of knew that popular student at your school
Hmm.
or
Sure.
that one freshman that everybody knew. So,
Right.
it's not like that we haven't seen him
It's always
before,
been there, but
but,
yeah,
it
not
hasn't been
necessarily marketed. Yeah.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's definitely going to be
Yeah.
the thing moving forward and something to look out for. So,
Awesome. All right. Well, Austin, thanks so much for joining me today.
no
It's been
problem.
great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jessica.